The room was silent, as though the marble walls themselves held their breath. At 5:32 a.m., the body of Pope Francis born Jorge Mario Bergoglio lay beneath a single white linen sheet in the Apostolic Palace. A silver crucifix stood at the head of the bed, and a Vatican physician quietly closed the pontiff's eyes. He had died in the night, peacefully, they claimed. But not everyone in the Vatican believed it. At precisely 5:36 a.m., Cardinal Benedetto, the Camerlengo, stepped forward. The old ritual began. In his hands, he held a small silver hammer, engraved with the keys of St. Peter. He tapped the Pope's forehead 3 times. Papa Francisco, Papa Francisco, silence. The Camerlengo looked to the Secretary of State. The Pope is dead. A young Swiss guard locked the double doors of the papal apartments. The sede vacanti, the period of papal vacancy, had begun. Outside, the world still slept. But inside the Vatican, centuries-old machinery had already begun to grind forward. Secrets, power, and prophecy would soon collide in ways no one expected. Cardinal Luca Benedetto had served for pontiffs in his lifetime. He knew the rituals, the oaths, the shadows. As Camerlengo, he held temporary authority over the Holy See, and his first duty was to secure the ring of the fisherman, the Pope's signet. He entered the papal study, followed by a notary, 2 Swiss guards, and Monsignor Tullio, a quiet cleric known for his precision. The ring, a thick gold band bearing the image of St. Peter casting his net, lay on the desk beside an unfinished letter. Benedetto picked it up carefully. The letter bore the Pope's personal seal, but it was addressed not to the Curia, nor to the College of Cardinals. It was addressed to the faithful of the earth. He slipped it into his robes, heart thudding. With a heavy sigh, he placed the ring on an obsidian slab and smashed it 3 times with the ceremonial hammer. The act, symbolic and absolute, marked the end of Francis's reign. The church was now without a shepherd, but in the deepest chambers of the apostolic archives, something had already stirred. Deep beneath the Vatican, beneath the Sistine Chapel and the ancient catacombs, the apostolic archive slept. Its climate-controlled corridors were filled with forbidden texts, sealed documents, and relics never meant for the eyes of the public. Few knew its full inventory, fewer still were permitted entry. Among them was Sister Helena Yanni. She was a woman of rare clearance, keeper of the silent vaults, and sworn to a lifetime of confidentiality. She had no title beyond archivist, but among the Curia, she was a ghost rumored, respected, feared. At 6:03 a.m., the outer alarm chimed. A coded knock followed. Sister Helena opened the iron gate to reveal Monsignor Tullio, breathless, his cassock streaked with morning dew. "You're early," she said, "too early for procedure." Tullio nodded. "The Pope is dead." Helena's expression didn't change. She turned, motioned him inside. He handed her the sealed envelope. "The Camerlengo requests verification." Helena took the letter without a word. As she broke the wax seal, the scent of frankincense and ink filled the narrow room. Her eyes skimmed the parchment, and for a moment her gloved hand trembled. "This," she whispered, "this isn't meant for any council." Tullio stepped closer. "What is it? A warning?" She moved quickly, ushering him into the lower chamber, passing coded doors and ancient manuscripts until they reached a locked iron cabinet. She pressed her thumb into a biometric scanner, an unauthorized modification she'd insisted on after the Benedict resignation years ago, and the cabinet clicked open. Inside was an object no one outside the highest reaches of the Curia knew existed, a red leather folio with gold trim. On its cover, an embossed symbol, a serpent and a lamb. "The prophecy of the Black Star," she whispered. Meanwhile, in the Apostolic Palace, Cardinal Benedetto paced. He held in his hand a black dossier, a gift from the Pope mere weeks before his death. It contained names, symbols, patterns that stretched back decades, maybe centuries. The dossier had a title, Conclave Manipulata. It alleged foreign interference in past papal elections, secret financing, threats, even murder. Benedetto had once dismissed such theories as ecclesiastical paranoia. Now, as he stared at the sealed letter to the faithful of the earth, the pieces no longer felt like paranoia. They felt like a map to something far older than modern politics, something embedded in the very bones of the church. Helena's footsteps echoed through the archive vault, the red folio clutched tightly to her chest. Her breath was shallow, not from the descent, but from the weight of what she carried. The prophecy of the Black Star had not been opened since the 17th century, and it was never meant to be opened again unless a specific sign had appeared. A black star over Rome, and 2 nights ago, the sign came. Not visible to the public, but seen through Vatican telescopes that monitored anomalies cosmic and terrestrial. The sign was a celestial event not recorded in any astronomical almanac, a burst of darkness in the sky that swallowed a quadrant of stars above the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. The moment it happened, the archive alarm had quietly triggered. No one else had responded, only Helena. She laid the red folio across a velvet-lined table in the reading room, surrounded by marble busts of forgotten cardinals. With reverent precision, she opened it. The text was in a mix of Latin and Aramaic, written in a fluid hand, known only to the monks of the Eschaton order, a long-defunct sect accused of heresy during the Inquisition. Helena's translation began to flow across her tablet as she muttered each word aloud. In the year when the shepherd falls and the serpent rises, the gates shall quake and the seal shall tremble. A stranger shall wear the mitre, and the lamb shall bleed before the cross. The next lines were missing, literally torn out. In his office, Cardinal Benedetto read and reread the black dossier. Every name within it was familiar. Some were now dead. Others sat on the current College of Cardinals. Some were not cardinals at all. One, in particular, drew his eye. Omar bin Rashid, Observer Petronet Holdings. A Muslim energy mogul, present as an unofficial consultant during the 2005 conclave. Impossible, but there it was in papal script, signed by Benedict XVI himself. Benedetto's hand shook. He picked up the Vatican's secure red phone. "Get me the archivist," he said. That same hour, on the roof of a luxury hotel overlooking the Tiber, a man in a charcoal gray suit lit a clove cigarette. He spoke into a satellite phone in French. "It has begun. The scroll is open." A pause. "Good. The Decemviri are watching." He dropped the phone into the wine bucket beside him, where it fizzed and died. Below, Rome continued to wake. And somewhere inside St. Peter's Basilica, beneath the tomb of St. Pius X, a crack began to spread across the marble floor. The man in the gray suit went by many names, but in the codebooks of the Decemviri, he was simply Argentum. His real name was lost long ago, buried in the Vatican's shadow deals during the Cold War, a ghost broker, a fixer of impossible problems, a handler of secrets too volatile to entrust to any digital archive. He entered the side door of San Giovanni dei Fiorentini at dusk. Inside, the candlelit nave was empty except for 10 men and women seated in a semicircle before the main altar. Each bore an identical signet ring, a silver band with a black star pressed into volcanic glass. "The Decemviri, the shepherd is dead," Argentum said. "Phase 1 has succeeded." Cardinal Echeverria, the only visibly clerical figure in the group, leaned forward, and the scroll opened. Argentum confirmed. "The archivist has engaged." Murmurs. A woman in her 50s with Nordic features, dressed in a Vatican diplomatic uniform, spoke. "We were promised that the Black Star Scroll would remain sealed until 2035. Argentum smiled faintly. "You were promised a delay, not immunity." The celestial sign accelerated the timetable. An older gentleman with thick glasses, a former NATO analyst, interjected. Then we moved to containment. Argentum shook his head. We moved to installation. The conclave will be compromised. A ripple of silence followed. You mean to install the stranger? Argentum turned to the altar and lit a single black candle. The prophecy demands it, and the stranger has already been prepared. Sister Helena had not slept in 23 hours. In her quarters, small, sparsely furnished, lined with theological texts, she sat hunched over for open folios, her hair unbound. Her tablet buzzed with Vatican secure alerts, but she ignored them. The torn portion of the prophecy of the Black Star haunted her. A stranger shall wear the mitre. There had been stranger papal choices before. Francis himself had been considered an outsider, but this prophecy wasn't metaphorical. It contained astronomical dates, references to geopolitical ruptures, and even most chillingly a nod to a global technocratic council. She called Monsignor Tullio. I need access to the Quartanota. He hesitated. That's off limits. Not even the Secretary of State has clearance. Then find me someone who does. The next pope may not be Catholic. In the hills of Lebanon, at a Jesuit retreat center overlooking the ruins of Tyre, Father Elias Cowrie tended to the olive groves. He was unassuming, deeply charismatic, and fluent in 9 languages. He'd never sought power. But his name had recently appeared in a Vatican dossier marked Petrus Obscurus. He was 43 years old, Eastern Catholic, a convert from Druze origins, and trained at the Gregorian University in Rome. His theological work had been cited by both progressive and conservative factions alike. What made him dangerous, at least to the Decemviri, was not what he had done, but who his grandfather had been. Yusef al-Kari, a mystic mentioned in the Vatican's suppressed Visioni di Fatima addendum. One night, a convoy arrived at the retreat. A Vatican envoy stepped out. Father Elias, the man said, "You are summoned to Rome, not as a priest, but as a candidate." Back in Rome, Cardinal Benedetto finally met with Sister Helena in a cloistered office behind the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. Helena laid out the folios, the Black Star symbol, and a timeline of celestial anomalies. Benedetto's eyes were wide. You're suggesting we're on the verge of prophetic fulfillment. No, Helena said. We're past it. She slid a photograph across the table, one of Father Elias Cowrie, taken 3 days ago in Lebanon, his face ringed by shadow and sunrise. He's the stranger, she said. Impossible. He's not even a cardinal. Helena stood. Then they'll make him one, quietly, in pectore. Just like they did with others. Benedetto's face paled. He opened a drawer, removed the letter from Pope Francis, the one addressed to the faithful of the earth. They read it together. It began. If this letter is opened after my death, know this: the next conclave may not be chosen by the Holy Spirit, but by his enemy. Deep within Castel Sant'Angelo, beneath layers of Renaissance stone, a chamber known only to 5 living cardinals was opened for the first time in decades. It was called the Red Room not for its decoration, but for what was done there. Inside, the Decemviri held their emergency meeting. Argentum placed a small vial on the marble table. Inside was a microchip encased in crystal. This, he said, contains the predictive modeling for global ecclesiastical influence up to the year 2075. The AI was trained on papal encyclicals, electoral college behavior, and geopolitical vectors. The others stared. The model has selected Cowrie as the ideal transitional pontiff. He is devout, ecumenical, and manipulable. And what of resistance? Asked a German intelligence attaché. Neutralized, Argentum replied. Or converted. The day of the conclave arrived. Rain lashed the cobbled streets of Vatican City. Thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, umbrellas clustered like sea urchins. Inside the Sistine Chapel, 117 electors entered. Their oaths were sworn, the doors sealed. But one cardinal listed only as in pectore was unknown to the media. Elias Cowrie, Helena, disguised in pilgrim's attire, stood in the square watching the chimney. The first smoke, black, then again, black. But on the third vote, less than 24 hours in a puff of white emerged. Cries erupted. Habemus papam. Helena's heart sank. She knew the choice had not been made by consensus. She turned, disappearing into the crowd. On the balcony, a tall figure emerged in white. Young, humble, radiating stillness. I am Elias the First, he said. Servant of the servants of God, some wept. Others, watching from encrypted satellites and underground bunkers, simply nodded. The installation was complete. Warning, though fictional, this narrative draws on real Vatican rituals, traditions, and secret archives challenging what we think we know about power, faith, and the cost of prophecy. Subscribe and follow the full multi-chapter story updated weekly. Comment below, do you believe a prophecy could change the future of the church?